That's a good way to open the show. Welcome to the niggerization of America. Oh my gosh.
Funny, but not.
Hey y'all. It's hilarious. I can't wait for this empire to crash and burn. Any hooser, hey y'all. All three of y'all, what's going on?
Tree, y'all.
The trifecta. Who is it? It's probably, let's see, Rao. I want to see who pop in the chat. I guess. Oh, well, now there's five.
Conspicuously absent last time was Ricky, was Erica.
Yeah, but you know, Ricky big shit and BAP now, like at the top.
No.
Who is it? Rao? What's up? Lou? What's up, Lou? Musa wasn't in there either, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. People got jobs.
You know, it's Thursdays.
It is Thursdays. And also this might be the time that she's like picking up Z and stuff. What's going on, y'all?
Back at it.
We back at it. Hey, Leah.
Like we never left.
We back like unemployment. We back like tax season. So they're cutting the IRS, which I'm not mad at. So it was like, leave me alone.
Listen, I'm like, do I just wait it out and see if it's even necessary for me to file my taxes?
That's what I'm saying. But the caveat to that is like, what if I'm owed a refund?
You probably ain't gonna get it.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, yes, keep the staff so I can get my money, but like get rid of them if I owe money. Or come get it.
Well, what did they say? Doge is trying to give us this little bit of money because they laid all these people off.
Oh, our little $600.
Yeah.
You know, I was reading this comment that was like, it was from somebody from some other country. Like, you Americans have all these guns and all these people are still alive. Like, what are y'all doing? You remember in Japan, that dude had like a homemade makeshift gun held together with duct tape and hopes and dreams. we got like switches, banana clips, all kind of shit, and everybody's just alive and well.
Walking around at peace. At least be scared.
At least, listen, that's funny. They be calling Elon Musk his little son that he's all of a sudden popped up with. They be calling him Human Shield because they like, anyway. I'm actually really grossed out he has kids like that. Like who? Maybe it was science because I can't imagine anybody sleeping with him.
I was gonna say something about that, but that was gonna be very terrible in a number of ways. And it wasn't just gonna be about Elon, so I'm gonna let it go.
Yeah, he seems like he smells like warm sour cream. Again, hey y'all, hey Megan, hey Ashley Knuckles. Yeah, just keep it to yourself. Shout out to Luigi. Yeah. What else is going on? I heard we might be getting these remaining stimmies Biden owed us. Oh. Yeah.
These are only for protecting the tree-lined streets from folks just a tad shadier.
Yeah. Well, you know, the stimmies, hopefully they got canteen in the concentration camps then, because where else will we use the money? Ducats. Thank you, Megan. I had got Tongo a bunch of shirts for Valentine's Day, and I was like, let me get me some. But I'm bringing back the political t-shirts. He got me Spanx, which I asked for. So not like Spanx, like the draw, like the tummy control draws.
Not to clarify, not Spanx.
Yeah, not Spanx, but Spanx. We just had Dr. Burton come speak to my critical theories class about 30 minutes ago. Oh, wow. Oh, what's up, me? Yeah, Dr. Burton should. Well, maybe that because he said he's hopping off right at 4, so that makes sense if that's what he was doing. Right. All right. So we could go ahead and just do our check-in as we're waiting for Ori to hop on. So it's been a busy last week. It'll be a busy this week. So last week I was on a 5-day residency at Berkeley. Me and Dr. Jody Dean, who is the co-editor of Organized Fight Win, and they worked us, y'all. So on Monday, we lectured in a class. Tuesday, we had our academic lecture. Wednesday, we went to Berkeley High School and talked to 2 different classes. And then Thursday, we had like our public panel, which was myself, Jody, Stephen Osazuwa, who's at CSU Long Beach. Is either Long Beach or LA. And he was supposed to fly out, but that's when it was raining like crazy. So he didn't actually make it down. So he ended up Zooming in. And then so Tongo hopped on the panel because I was like, we need to. And then it was Rupa. I forgot Rupa Miriam, I think her last name is. So yeah, it was a dope discussion and it was a great experience. It's just so interesting, you know, like so the residency was in African diaspora studies at Berkeley, which is where I got my PhD. And it's so funny how like they are so like, let me tell you something, okay? Back then they didn't want me. Now I'm hot. They all love me. It's so interesting. Every time I go back, how they, you know, they're so proud of me and they can't, you know, or not like they can't believe, but like, you know, they're following all the stuff I'm doing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, y'all did not really fuck with me for real for like my first 4 years of graduate school. So it's just interesting. Like I'm not bitter about it. I just find it very interesting. But it's like the prodigal daughter returns. That's how they treat it. So anyway, that was great. This week, so tomorrow I'm flying out to Princeton. There's a racial capitalism and the history of political thought symposium. That should be really interesting. I still need to read all the papers, but so that's going to be on Saturday. So I'm flying out tomorrow. And then I'm going to fly to Albany. Tango has a thing there, so I'm just going to meet him there so that we can just be together as a family. But then tonight I have Black Feminist Night School. So Treva Lindsay and I will be in conversation about Black women in labor. So that should be interesting conversation. And then y'all, I keep saying interesting, but last night randomly, I was at this dinner with Ta-Nehisi Coates. Not like, so there was a dinner that was organized between Ta-Nehisi Coates and like the Palestinian community. And then there was some Black organizers, and then they asked Tongo if he and I wanted to go. And I was like, did they know I wrote this thing in 2017 titled Why Claudia Jones Will Always Be More Relevant Than Ta-Nehisi Coates? He was like, well, I guess not. So anyway, we went, and so the Palestinian folks who were there were like the uncommitted movement people. And so it was a very particular politic. And I was like, yeah, my assessment of Ta-Nehisi is correct. Because, I went with the open heart and open mind. It was like, I can be rather harsh. Or, I could be, I'm very critical of certain things. But no, I'm correct on him. And, I'm glad that there's certain political factions that find him inspiring and whatever. But, it's not my politics. It's not my politics. The food was good, though. And that's it. Those are my updates.
I was wondering if you were going to say more about that, but I will leave it.
It's just, but you know what? He's very much, when it comes to Palestine, he's very much about like the moral question. It's like the morality of it. Mm-hmm. He said he's very proud of the uncommitted movement. Like he kept telling them how proud he was of them and thought they did a great job. He expressed some sympathy for some of the ways that Black people were responding to Kamala's loss and how they might be displacing that anger onto different groups. And he was like, well, Black people have gotten the short end of the stick for a very long time. And so I think that he offered some words that were soothing to people who are very concerned about this, who are trying to organize across like race. And he was just like, you got to be patient or whatever. So, but he's not I don't know what he considers himself. He's not a revolutionary, for sure. I don't know that if he considers himself a radical. I don't find him to be radical, but I think that, it's funny. I really wanted to ask him, like, how does it feel to have been like the liberal whisperer? Like, that's kind of like what you kind of are now. And he did say that, he said, once you attain a certain status, the audiences that you start to have are not necessarily who the audience for your work is. And he was like, he said he felt the way about that. And so he was happy to have a dinner like that one because it was like the people he wanted to be in conversation with. So, I mean, he not legend to me. He's not my hero, but they seem very excited and very inspired by him and his book. So that's all.
Well, the thing that I think I've always said, not so much about that particular audience, but in terms of his work, people enter into conversations about topics that have been ongoing at all different places. And I think, it's nice to have multiple points of entry. And the hope is that people go beyond whatever their point of entry is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We need to get rid of celebrity culture, though. It's actually not very useful. But anyway, what's up with you?
I don't have a whole lot to report. Last week I was sick, which was crazy because we had the Bell Hooks Symposium. It was the fourth annual Bell Hooks Symposium, which is about Black feminism and Black art, which my relationship to art is interesting and I appreciate a lot of things about it. But there were also just moments where during the day where I really I was very in tune to just the class politics of art and what is accessible and available. One of the keynote speakers, I think, what is her name? Delita Frazier, does really beautiful work. And I just went online to look up her work, and that shit was $40,000. And I was like, this will never happen in my lifetime. And even but even prints were thousands of dollars. And so I was like, oh, my best bet would be to buy one of her little books and get them things cut out and framed.
Cut the pages out. Even Sean's work, Sean Crowley, even his work, it ain't cheap. It's more affordable than that, but it ain't cheap.
Yeah. And so, and it was, a variety of different mediums of art. And so there were some that I found very moving. There was this one scholar, she's from Northwestern, I'm forgetting her name at the moment. But she did this project where she had recently lost her mother and she had created this grief soundtrack. And then she created this space where she would play the music on the soundtrack that people got to come in and experience that feeling. So I can understand some of those kind of affective kind of ways of engaging with grief and designated sites. And so some of that stuff I appreciated. But it was great. And then I found myself with the flu afterwards. So I was out all week last week. I am, just dealing with life and family things. I'm headed home for a funeral tomorrow, actually, for my uncle's funeral. And the kind of highlight of my weekend this weekend, when I finally kind of recovered, was going to see this play at the Huntington called, well, it's a part of a 9-part series about, so the first play I saw a couple months ago, it's the Ufot family cycle. And it's a 9-part series about this Nigerian family that immigrates to the United States. The first play takes place in 1975 in Houston, Texas. And it's about that first wave of professional Nigerian immigrants that come to the Americas, about them settling, whatever, all those kind of things. Second play was the one I went to this past weekend. That play takes place in, thank you, Elon. That place takes place in 2009 in Massachusetts. The main character is the daughter of the main character from the last show. The main character is a lesbian. She's not really struggling with her sexual identity, but she is struggling with telling her family about it. They speak Ibibio, which is another ethnic language in Nigeria that a lot of people don't speak. But one of the main characters of the play, well, not main characters, but one of the sets of characters of the play are her ancestors who speak Ibibio. And they speak Ibibio in the play. They're kind of in between the scenes and you hear them speaking to her. But, most of us as an audience don't understand Ibibio. Many Nigerians don't even speak Ibibio. So I come out during the intermission and this woman who I've also already been told is the chief of police at a local university. So I already didn't want to interact with her. She's talking to another friend of mine and they asked me oh, Layla, do you understand what's happening in the play? What language is speaking? I was like, no, I don't speak Ibibio. But my sense of what's happening in the play is that her ancestors are speaking to her and telling her that, you know, she needs to be true to herself, whatever. Like and that eventually comes to be true because there's like a climactic scene at the end of the play where the ancestors are speaking Ibibio to her, she's speaking English, but then all of a sudden she starts speaking Ibibio to her parents, and she's never spoken Ibibio before, and the ancestors start speaking English. So basically we get a translation. But anyway, beside the point, this woman says that she is scared. She is scared at the play because she cannot understand the language that they are speaking. And
she's scared? Was she white?
No, she's a Black woman. Not only a Black woman, chief of police, but also teaches at another university. And apparently, I was so disgusted. Now, I was cold, so I had my arms crossed. So I was standing there cold. But apparently, my friends after the fact were like picking on me because once she said that she was scared, I was like, scared of what? Like, what do you think is going to happen? You think somebody's about to put a spell on you, put a root on you? And I just remember saying to myself, I kind of cut a piece of your lock off just to put a root on you, my damn self.
Slap her with a tampon.
So fucking ignorant. Like, it made me so angry. And then she was talking to another one of my friends who also happens to be an anthropologist. And the friend revealed that I'm also an anthropologist. And she's like, oh, I should have y'all come speak to my class. I was like, you should have her. She's more fun than I am. Not me. And I'm like, because if it was me, I would have to come. One, I already know that you're chief of police, so I'm already going to say something that's probably going to undermine your authority in your classroom. And then two, I have to tell them that you're an ignorant ass fool. And I can't do that. And I've been having a series of experiences like that lately, where I think it is just clear that I am over people. And I was thoroughly enjoying the play, and it pissed me off so much because it just disrupted the otherwise good experience I was having with the play. And I was just like, I don't know. And apparently she's really churchy, which doesn't surprise me because churchy, fearful, afraid, and then you go into a career where your fears are allowed to be enacted on other people, and then you teaching people your dumb ignorant shit. So
well, clearly she's not evangelical because they be speaking in tongues, and
this is what I
you shouldn't have felt any type of way.
Her dumb ass probably be speaking in tongues, and she probably don't. She's just. And because it's ignorant, one, but it's also very particularly anti-African, and that's the other. But it's also like, this is what the play is clearly about, a family that has a Nigerian family. So what, like, did you really think the whole entire set of plays was only going to be in English? Like, that just, but anyway, that's my
Hooser. All right, y'all. Well, Ori is here. Hey, Ori.
Hey, Ori. Oh, no.
You sound crazy. It's like, maybe it's your headphones. Yeah. We was just talking about you being conspicuously absent, Ricky. So hello.
Ori's everywhere.
Ori is everywhere, y'all. So anyway, we're not doing an intro because Ori's everywhere. You know who this is. And Ori has been here before.
Is that better? I just took my headphones out.
Yes,
that is better.
What's up? What's going on?
Hey,
just living life. What's going on with you?
Same.
Same.
And now that my headphones are out, I'm going to be hearing the life that I'm living.
Oh.
More life. Some of
that life might make an appearance. So.
That is great. We love life.
Yes.
Nia, she just put you, she just told on you. She said, oh, I love how he put on a collar shirt for y'all.
This is a hoodie, first of all. This is a hoodie. I just went to another class, and I was late. I was cleaning up my office, and I was late, so I sat down, and I was in a t-shirt. But I was a little chilly, so I put this hoodie on. My bad, Nia. It's no disrespect.
That's what happens when you gotta do multiple appearances in one day. You gotta make it look like you haven't.
Big Ori, not the little one. All right, y'all. So of course, part of what we wanted to bring Ori on to talk about is removing or withdrawing his book from consideration for the Pauli Murray Prize, which is the book prize for the African American Intellectual History Society, but to place that within a broader discussion about the politics of this moment. And so, do we want to start by reading the Hammer and Hope letter? So for those of you who are completely unaware of what the African American Intellectual History Society is, in Hammer and Hope, so let me just read the letter and then we can explain. Okay. So this letter was published in the number 5 fall 2024 edition. It says last July, when it became public that a founder of the African American Intellectual History Society had accepted the $300,000 Dan David Prize, which is headquartered at Tel Aviv University, a group of leading scholars in the field of Black studies wrote and circulated an open letter in protest to the boards of AAIHS and the new affiliated journal Black Global Thought. We understand that in a field as diverse as ours, scholars have a wide variety of opinions about any number of topics. But it is simply duplicitous for the public-facing AAIHS and its journal to align itself with the radical politics and history of the Black studies tradition, while privately, the most influential person associated with both accepts this prize during the Israeli government's ongoing genocidal siege of Gaza and its belligerent and bellicose attacks on the West Bank. We invite you to read and circulate our letter. So here's the open letter. As scholars of Black studies working in a long tradition of internationalist and global solidarity, we reach out to you, the officers and leaders of the AAIHS, to take a stand. The Israeli government has essentially obliterated Gaza, killing and maiming tens of thousands of civilians, scattering over 1 million refugees, and critically damaging or destroying every university, hospital, library, and any other repository of Palestinian life and history. The West Bank is also increasingly under siege. Unbelievably, and in the midst of such horror, members of the AAIHS have accepted the Dan David Prize, housed at Tel Aviv University. We view his $300,000 award as thoroughly tainted by wars of aggression and underwritten by American and Israeli state imperialism. While we acknowledge that many foundations and institutions that fund our paychecks and fellowships are implicated in odious activity and funding streams, we simply cannot allow base false equivalences to justify complicity, acceptance, and boosterism of organizations directly engaged in illegal occupation according to the International Court of Justice. Tel Aviv University, located a mere 40 miles from Gaza, was built on the remains of a Palestinian village raised by Israeli commando forces in 1948. It houses the Institute for National Security Studies and receives generous funding from Israel's Ministry of Defense to train combat officers. Faculty and student researchers have collaborated with the Elbit Systems, Israel's largest weapon manufacturer and supplier of drones that target Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. By accepting the Dan David Prize, hosted by Tel Aviv University, the AAIHS leadership has essentially crossed a global picket line of Palestinian solidarity and violated calls to refuse the prize by Palestinian activists. Your organization is framed around the ideas of the Black radical tradition and purports to extol the insights, frameworks, and logics of Black internationalism, while also seeking out and situationally aligning itself with Black leftists. Your blog, Black Perspectives, offers the political vision of Black radicals, including the principle of international solidarity. As board members and past presidents of the AAIHS, you know the dangers of cultural projects that are designed to shroud brutal racial violence and deadly racial capitalism through the elevation of selected representatives of liberal multiculturalism and official anti-racism. As writers, teachers, scholars, and activists in this tradition, we must guard against the capture of Black intellectuals by those who would rationalize or implement colonial agendas executed through regimes of racial terror. Recently, your leadership announced the founding of a new journal, Global Black Thought, declaring that it was developed from the urgency of the current political moment. In a recent interview, the journal's managing editor said, quote, "Whether it is the battle against resurgent right-wing movements, climate change, or the shifting balance of power worldwide between traditional and emerging world powers, Black people across the globe are going to have a critical role to play in those debates. Understanding how those contemporary debates are informed by the long, rich history of Black intellectual discourse is important for everyone," end quote. Indeed, a special issue on Black feminist truth-telling is slated as part of the inaugurating events of the new journal. This is an alarming example of invoking a tradition rooted in anti-imperialism, international solidarity, and protest to project an image of radical politics and thought while simultaneously remaining silent on even accommodating the brutal siege of Gaza and all occupied Palestine. Students, faculty, and staff at the universities in which AAIHS leadership and members work, and whose only offenses are peaceful anti-war protests or criticism of Israel, have been disciplined, and many still face the threat of harassment. How can you launch a new journal ostensibly dedicated to global Black thought while remaining silent on the issue of Palestine? At best, it is ill-informed, at worst, mendacious. Mendacious is crazy. Is AAIHS only interested in building a brand that invokes Black radicalism and Black feminism to appeal to Black scholars while maintaining no particular commitment to the underlying ideas of freedom, justice, and self-determination that animates those traditions? The leaders and membership of AAIHS should be at the forefront of condemning the Israeli government's actions. We have seen the callous repression of that movement by conservative lawmakers and liberal university administrators. To be sure, the forces that seek to ban or circumscribe Black studies and Black history on college campuses are the same forces that mobilized to suppress Palestine solidarity encampments and protests this past spring. Indeed, the most conservative critics link the rise of Palestine solidarity to critical race theory, ethnic studies, and diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. They believe that the study of Black oppression has made young people particularly sensitive to the treatment and experience of Palestinians, so they have taken to demonizing Black studies as grievance studies. Recent polling has shown that more than 2/3 of Black Americans support an immediate and permanent ceasefire to end Israel's onslaught on Gaza. This is an issue that you cannot hide from. Your silence will not protect you. It emboldens those who are working to remake the university by removing dissenting voices, thought, and politics. Your silence exposes glaring contradictions that deserve explanation. Is your Black internationalism and ethical commitment only historical? Anyway, what of the rich history of Black intellectual and political affinity with Palestine? Some contradictions deserve explanation, even if members have decided that they have no particular interest in the cause of Palestinian freedom and self-determination. The AAIHS's reputation and positionality in representations of Black liberation, internationalism, and feminism are at stake because of your silence. Therefore, we urge the AAIHS to, 1, issue a statement against the Israeli state project of Palestinian annihilation and in favor of peace and freedom for Palestinians in the Middle East. And 2, issue a statement of transparency, assuring readers and potential contributors, that the AAIHS Annual Conference, New Journal, and general activities are not being funded by the Dan David Prize. If the AAIHS cannot take these basic steps to preserve the integrity of the Black radical tradition in which they profess to operate, we urge a withdrawal from the AAIHS and its upcoming conference at Brown University. Then a whole bunch of motherfuckers signed it, including myself. So that is the letter. And that is what the spirit in which you removed your book, Ori, right? So can you say more about that?
For sure. I mean, the thing that I wanted to emphasize is that I don't think what I did was especially heroic or unique. And I like to think that the scholars who I'm tight with, the two of you included, the people who are in my circle, would have done some version of the same thing. I mean, the letter lays it all out. I didn't even feel like I really had a choice in the matter, right? I mean, it was like that. The people that I respect in Black studies laid out this principled critique. They asked for the bare minimum, which is to condemn the annihilation of Palestinians and to assure their members in the broader community that their money isn't coming from the Israeli state. And the silence spoke volumes. And so I felt that it was my obligation to say no. And it's that simple. Like, I didn't even have to think about it that much. I mean, the only question was like, how was I going to do it? It wasn't if I was going to do it, it was how. Should I wait and see if I get the prize and then say no? Should I just say no off jump? Should I try to organize with some other of the finalists so that we could kind of do it collectively? But ultimately, I kept getting kind of texts and stuff of people saying congratulations, or other people, you included, Dr. CBS, saying congratulations, but as you know, this organization is suspect because of the silence. So it was like, no, I'm gonna just let them know right now. And I'm happy to report, I got his permission to share this, that Eric McDuffie also pulled out as well. So shout out to Eric McDuffie. So this need, and I appreciate all of the, like, I didn't expect it to blow up like this. I appreciate all the support on Twitter, but I especially appreciated what Musa Springer said. Like, yo, this needs to be normalized as a minimum baseline. Like, if like, saying no is easy. All you got to do is say no. Just no. I don't want that. That's it. It's not a heavy lift.
I just want to note that Eric McDuffie will be coming to Wayne State on February 27th. So shout out to him.
So obviously this was not just alluded to, but clearly pointed out in the letter from Hammer and Hope, in that none of us, we existing inside of the U.S. Academy, like none of us are in a position where we are not in some kinds of ways dealing in blood money. And so I wanted to hear you maybe talk a little bit more about even in spite of that truth, right? And knowing that there are all other kinds of ways that are the ways that we make money, the ways that we make a living are tied up with and implicated in the genocide in Gaza, and the encroachment in the West Bank, but also in all kinds of all of the ways in which these universities have been built off the backs of slave labor, and have what was it 2 or 3 years ago when Crystal Strong was really active with helping to uncover the fact that the anthropology departments at Penn had been keeping the bones of the children of MOVE victims, right? So there are plenty of examples of the ways in which all of us are sort of implicated in these things. But why does it matter in this particular instance to take this stance, to you, in a general sense?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and yeah, we're all embedded in these contradictions. I think obviously we're embedded in a structure of power, and the structures work to divest us of in many instances of our agency, of our so we have to make a living under capitalism, which means that we have to submit ourselves to exploitation. So the workplace is already a space of exploitation, and our workplaces are imbricated in all of these, different forms of extraction. So we know all of this. But what's also true is that at certain moments, many of us will find ourselves in a position where we have a unique moment or ability to exert some leverage or some agency. And it just so happened that at this particular moment, I was given the opportunity to demonstrate, again, what needs to be understood as a baseline level of ethical behavior among scholars. So that's one thing, is we have these moments that are contextually situated where we have the ability to sort of register our dissent and to say no publicly to these things. The other thing is, I think that the really important part that the letter articulates so clearly is the way that this organization is enveloping itself within the trappings of Black internationalism and Black radicalism without actually demonstrating the kind of international solidarity, the minimum level of international solidarity and accountability to communities that are under siege, and in many ways betraying the sort of lineage of Black intellectual solidarity with Palestine. And so those were the two things for me that made it necessary for me to speak out. But it's an important question. And I'm not on an anti-award crusade. I mean, the other part is that, there's the university is so organized around clout chasing and prestige. And part of what we got to do is just disidentify from that stuff. And for those of us who come into this sphere grounded in some kind of movement ethics, to just to be clear about who we're accountable to. I don't feel accountable to the academy. You know what I mean? Before Tip of the Spear came out, I sent copies to the different people who were actually in the book. And that was the real peer review that I had that came out before. So regardless of any award, the people to whom I'm accountable already said, yes, thank you. This is a contribution. We appreciate it. And so I don't need, and it's not to say that I don't want awards. I submit I submitted my book to book awards. You know what I mean? So it's not that, but it's like, that is not where I get my sustenance from and my validation from, and it's not what drives me. And I think it is what drives a lot of folks, and we need to really examine that.
Yeah, and a couple things. So there was a question about if other people have pulled their book. So Eric did, and that I had reached out to another colleague whose book was nominated and let her know that Eric and Ori had pulled their books, or let them know. And, said, it would be great if you and others would follow suit to sort of exhibit this policy, or to engage in this solidarity with Palestine, and to demand this like transparency. And they decided not to, they said for a number of reasons, they decided not to withdraw their book without giving reasons, which they don't owe me any explanation. But it was my obligation to at least extend them, let them know what's happening and to give them the opportunity to do so. And that the other thing too is that prior to this open letter going out, many people who were deemed sort of mentors or advisors to this person had reached out to them and said, don't accept this. Please don't accept this award. Or if you accept it, give the money to Palestinian organizations, like redistribute that wealth. And they made rationalizations about how, the prize wasn't, it wasn't administered by, anyway, whatever rationalizations about the money. And so I think that context is important. And so what do we make of this, right? That first of all, there are people who write about radicalism, but who are not radicals, right? Who don't embody this politic, but then they sort of become the face or the spokesperson of what Black radicalism is. What do you make of that? How are we as radicals, revolutionaries in the academy to relate to these people? It's a question for you.
I mean, I don't have a whole lot of, maybe other people see it differently, but I don't have a whole lot of people that I'm tight with in the academy. It's not the space that I get my sustenance from. I kind of do what I do, and I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of people that I'm now cool with, you two included. But I just don't. Sorry.
I mean, I would say that has also been my experience. Like you, Ori, I have had the benefit of meeting a kind of tight-knit kind of inner circle inside of this. But in a bigger sense, though, not in terms of interpersonal interactions, but that question about what does it mean that people become the kind of, what do you call it? The Pied Piper of Black radicalism and have no desire to implement that in their daily lives in any kinds of ways. For me, I don't necessarily know, there are different ways to sort of live and embody what you understand to be a radical or revolutionary ethic. And, I'm not necessarily here to judge what all of those things are. But I do think that it is the height of hypocrisy when we are actually in the midst of ongoing struggles, very glaring examples of sort of what these things are. And people feel no need or desire to want to be accountable to people who are, imminently being harmed, even the kind of smaller knit circles of people that they say that they're, that they ostensibly care about what they think, right? In terms of, you've created an intellectual organization that is supposed to be bringing people who are thinking about these things for what purposes, to what ends. And for me, I don't know, I have always found it detestable that people do this type of work for the sake of, getting their own jobs or getting their own accolades, but are unconcerned with what they actually mean outside in the real world. And so when you have an opportunity to say, okay, yes, we are all implicated in this blood money, and yes, we all have to work under capitalism in order to live and survive. But when I have a particular glaring contradiction, I feel no need to do anything different. That to me, okay, so this is the question I want to ask you about that then. What is that in terms of the academy? What does that then mean for you in terms of citational practices? Do you continue to engage with the work of people who write about those kinds of things? Like, so for me, as a person who does stuff on Pan-Africanism, Black women, feminism, the person who is implicated in AAIHS is one of the people who supposedly writes all this stuff on Black women and Pan-Africanism. And I've long had some issues with some of the things that I find in some of her work, but then it does make me ask questions for myself, like, do I even want to engage in citational practices with this person when I take so many issues with, you know, if you're living your life a certain way, then do I also have to question the way that you interpret historical data? Do I also have to question the way that you analyze interviews, the way, you know, how you interpret all of these things? And so I wonder what's your take on that?
No, that's real. That last part of the question, like, okay, if this is how you move in the real world, then like, what does that mean to how you relate to your scholarship? No, that's real. I mean, people who are super deep into carceral studies and know the field have commented to me like, wow, it's really interesting the amount of people you don't cite in the book. And so, yeah, no, that definitely influences who I cite and how I cite them for sure. Like I'm trying to cite people who, you know, and I've said this elsewhere that I tried to create the works cited page as kind of like a map for people who want to learn more. And so I want to direct people to things that that were produced, you know, by people who I think are doing, you know, important work and moving in ways that are ethical. And so, yeah, that's how I decided to do it for sure. And then in terms of how, you know, you all, I think, you know, part of the title of this episode was combating liberalism, you know, right-wing authoritarianism and liberalism. And, you know, obviously many people watching the show will be familiar with that essay written in 1937 by Mao Zedong, Combat Liberalism, and it's that piece was really influential to me, right? You know, about, you know, this idea of liberalism rejecting ideological struggle and standing for unprincipled peace, right? This idea of not saying if you have a disagreement with someone, you know, because because maybe you're friends or because, you know, they have something that you need or whatever. Like, I try not to do that. I try not to say things that I try not to talk about things that I don't know about. If I don't know something, I try to just say that or not say anything. I try to say what I mean, and I try not to let BS slide. That's just how it is with me. And some people dig it, some people don't. But, you know, that's just how it is. That's how I try to roll. And like I said, I don't think that this should be celebrated. I think this should be understood as an expectation. Because if it's not an expectation, then what are we doing? If this isn't an expectation, then what are we doing? Like, then it's all BS. If everything we're talking about isn't undergirded by a basic ethics, then we're just doing a whole bunch of BS and wasting our time.
I mean, I will say, so a couple things. One is, like, I also saw Musa's statement about, you know, this should be the bare minimum for academics, but it's not just academics. It's everybody. And I think that academics are low-hanging fruit, a very easy target for good reason. But it's not, it's like, what money is your organization accepting? What money are journalists accepting? When that USAID list came out, it was quite a few people who have been cited by quite a few radicals. And so I think that that's the hard part. It's like, it's easy to attack the people who are clearly like liberals or clearly reactionary. What are you doing in your organization? Are we holding movement people accountable? Like, are we, you know what I mean? Do we have the same smoke for those types of people? And secondly, I will say, to the credit of this person who accepted this money, this is very aligned with their politics. Oftentimes again, the type of we think that the type of work that people do means how they live their lives. It means that they stand for we map our own, or we project our own sort of radical disposition or radical understanding onto them. And so this is very much aligned with with the work that they've done, other types of interactions that other scholars have had with them, et cetera, et cetera. And so I want, and so that is something that I have raised from the outset of people raising this issue, is that this is very much aligned with, they have never said that they're anybody other than who they are. They have never claimed to be a radical. And I did raise from the outset the issue of the blood money. Although I do feel like, to a certain degree, it's our money. If we believe the analysis that they stole this shit from Africans and working class people, it's our fucking money. So there's that contradiction. But all of that to say, what is our responsibility to wage struggle where we are, right? So yes, it's easy to be like, fuck these liberals in academia, like I'm just here so I don't get fined. But if what the right has done effectively is like, every single institution is a terrain of struggle. So what is our responsibility to politicize, or to at least engage our liberal colleagues? Because it's very easy to like just punt, but like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, they're different. I mean, absolutely. I think I think we have to struggle where we are. Everyone does. Like, absolutely, 100%. I think there's lots of places to do that in terms of how we're situated. For some people, it's struggling with other colleagues. For others, it's about how they engage with students. For others, it's about like organizing faculty unions, or organizing staff unions, supporting student movements. I haven't had I don't think I have the disposition to take on the task of fighting with people who are like formally educated, well versed in literature, understanding of like history, but just choosing to remain silent on key issues. And I mean I think obviously we don't know, everyone's situated differently, right? So obviously the fact that I'm not in the discipline of history, this is a historical association, and I'm not, I mean, in terms of my, how I'm situated within the academy, it's somewhat less of a risk for me to do what I did because I'm not in history, I'm in anthropology. And so obviously I just burned a whole bunch of bridges within, I don't know what, and I don't really know a lot of those folks, but I'm just saying that maybe if I was in history, going up for tenure and other things like that, I could understand how that could, play out in a different kind of way. And that's not to say I would have made a different decision. I guess I'm just trying to say, people have their own calculus. And so, I'll leave that to them. I knew what I had to do, and that's all I can really speak on. I can't speak on what other people should do. But again, shout out to Eric McDuffie, who, we had never spoke. He got my phone number, and, he was like, yeah, can we talk about the prize? And I had never talked to him, so I didn't know how it was going to go. Like, I didn't know if he was going to be like, man, why you do that? But he was like, yo, that's what's up. Like, I pulled mine out too, and, we had a really good conversation. So.
Well, to your point about you not having temperament, I think, again, in terms of terrains of struggle, even though in terms of like, maybe I know what you were speaking to was like, I don't have the time to sit and have this like back and forth debate with them. But I do think that the making the public declaration and saying that this is not an award that I can see value in being bestowed upon me when you are not enacting these values that I was led to believe are what have presented this in the first place, right? Well, I mean, even what is the legacy of Pauli Murray, right? Like what, who is Pauli Murray, and why does this matter in terms of, and why did you as an organization choose this person to be the namesake for this award? And does that mean nothing? And is it all performative? And so I think the decision to do so, to do that is one of the way, is a way of engaging with that.
No doubt. And they need to understand that their silence is damaging their credibility among significant fractions of people in Black studies. So there's going to be a lot of people in Black studies who don't care, but they need to understand, listen, you all notice, if you're going to continue to move in the way that you are, then, people aren't going to want to have your name on their CV. Like, that's what I don't want that on my CV. If y'all are the type of Black organization that is not going to respond to a very legitimate letter demanding a minimum requirement of just speaking out, then no, then we shouldn't want to be associated with that.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if CBS, you had another question, but in speaking about like struggling on the terrain. So one, yes, and this is sort of like related to the conversation about combating liberalism. We are all teaching in universities, and I imagine that in your classrooms you are dealing with your students not knowing how to sort of respond. So there's both this kind of broader question that we're talking about in terms of you pulling this award, but then also like the broader political context of the United States right now, and students really feeling like, every day there's something else coming out, right? And so one of the things that I ended up doing yesterday in my class was reading this piece that is ironically in AAIHS's blog, but it's by Russell Rickford from 2017, and it's about, the title is Revolutionary Optimism in Despicable Times. And so I wanted to read this and then let us kind of continue this conversation.
Yeah, well, before you read that, I did want to point out that, so Pauli Murray was a liberal anti-communist. So I don't know that it's super far-fetched. It's probably more far-fetched to nominate Ori's book for the prize than doing the feckless shit in her name. So anyway.
Okay. So it said this post is part of our online forum Black October on the Russian Revolution and the African diaspora. Okay. Life is not an easy matter. You cannot live through it without falling into frustration and cynicism unless you have before you a great idea which raises you above personal misery, above weakness, above all kinds of perfidy and baseness. Leon Trotsky.
Trotsky, come on, Russell, my nigga.
Perhaps the idea that the United States has entered an era of deep social decay was once controversial. Today, the assertion seems utterly banal, a common sense acknowledgement of our grim realities. Not a day goes by without another assault on democracy. The vestiges of social protection for workers, women, immigrants, and other vulnerable groups are being stripped away. Killer storms reveal the volatility of our warming planet and the collapse of our plundered infrastructure. The Charlottesville atrocity has flushed from the woodwork even greater swarms of white supremacists. Meanwhile, our latest flirtation with nuclear apocalypse is furnishing more evidence that there is no war the militarists cannot foist on an inner American public. As the regime in Washington pursues its demonic agenda, the so-called party of opposition does little more than look on in disgust, assuring the people that it remains, by comparison, a far more desirable manager of global capitalist empire. It does so, of course, to help prepare progressives and others to accept as Democratic nominee in 2020 what will surely prove to be another warmongering Wall Street lackey. Amid such degradation, is it any wonder that many working people simply abandon most forms of political engagement, retreating into the privatized spheres of amusement and escape sanctioned by ruling elites? So what if such withdrawal further undermines our potential for collective activity? Choosing numbness over despair appears to be one of the few acts of agency still available to everyday folk. Contemplating revolution in such soul-crushing times may seem like a ridiculous exercise. No doubt, more modest goals, resisting gentrification or combating police brutality, occupy most people of conscience who can still find the will to fight. What then are we to make of the approaching centennial of the Russian Revolution? Is the idea of a complete transformation of the social order still relevant? Or must we dismiss such notions as absurd anachronisms and get on with the mundane task of survival? Let me acknowledge the obvious. It is difficult to imagine a people's revolution dawning in the US today. Sure, groups like the Democratic Socialists of America have experienced rapid growth, and some tendencies within Black Lives Matter movement have embraced a markedly anti-systemic agenda. Overall, however, the mechanisms of working class mobilization remain weak, while the forces of reaction appear stronger than ever, bolstered by white nationalist fervor and by a prolonged period of corporate domination. Still, dispossessed Americans cannot afford to relinquish the dream of popular rebellion. For the promise of a society that puts the last first, no matter how unlikely such a development may seem, is the beacon that must guide everyday struggles for dignity. What follows is a defense of revolutionary optimism. Faith without work is fantasy. We cannot simply wish away the status quo, but when combined with the program of grassroots organizing, envisioning revolution can be a vital part of our radical development. It can expand the parameters of our political imagination, assure us that the masses and not the possessing classes are the motive force of history, lift us above individual misery, and connect us to a rich history of human agency that winds through the past and unfurls into the future. That heritage began in the age of slavery. Before the birth of Marx and long before the arc of the 20th century insurrections, the Haitian Revolution rattled the world. The enslaved workers of Saint-Domingue, in liquidating a brutal ancient regime, fulfilled the true meaning of liberté, a principle that emanated from the French Revolution in 1789. Their successful uprising terrified the white West and birthed a sovereign Black nation. It also established a legacy of self-emancipation and militant anti-colonialism that easily eclipsed the egalitarian dimensions of the American Revolution, a bourgeois affair fought in part on behalf of the interests of New World slaveholders. But the first truly modern revolution occurred in a later epoch against the backdrop of the Great War and the maturation of capitalism and imperialism. It is important to note that the Russian or Bolshevik Revolution began in 1917 with mass strikes and demonstrations commemorating International Women's Day. Women were never ancillary. They were leading actors in the popular resistance to Tsarist rule. Often we recall Lenin's genius in converting Marxist theory into the applied science of revolution. Yet we must also remember the self-organized workers who helped transform Russian society from within, forming autonomous councils or Soviets and beginning to reallocate wealth, property, and power. The Russian Revolution was a genuinely global event. The creation of the Soviet Union was hardly its crowning achievement, for the concept of socialism in one country appeared to violate the spirit of proletarian internationalism. Indeed, the advent of the first socialist state was designed to stimulate worker insurrections throughout the world. Despite Lenin's recognition of the significance of African and Asian liberation movements, and despite the Communist International's commitment to fomenting revolution in both capitalist centers and colonial territories, many European Marxists continued to assume that white laborers in the industrialized West would play the leading role in smashing bourgeois society. It would fall to workers of color and inhabitants of dependent nations, heirs to older forms of anti-imperialist resistance, to seize the initiative and forge revolutionary traditions of their own. And that is precisely what they did. Over the next several decades, oppressed people throughout what we now call the Global South expanded and enriched the legacy of 1917, forming not a continuous lineage so much as a constellation of radical struggle. In 1949, insurgent peasants who had long endured semi-feudal conditions under Mao's communist forces toppled the government of Chiang Kai-shek, a regime deeply entangled with the imperialist West. American capitalists bemoaned the loss of China, a country that was never theirs to possess. But throughout the world, colonized and subjugated peoples saw the Chinese Revolution as a millennial event that heralded the fall of imperialism and the return of the darker masses to the stage of history. Another significant moment arrived in 1959. It was then that Castro and Che's band of guerrillas descended from the Cuban mountains and overthrew Batista, the lapdog of Yankee imperialism. For years, Cuba had served as a hedonistic playground for the wealthy, while much of its population wallowed in poverty. Now the island nation emerged as a bulwark of anti-racism and anti-capitalism on the doorstep of the American Colossus. Indeed, throughout the second half of the century, the wretched of the earth launched or consolidated revolutions in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Insurgents in Vietnam, Mozambique, Nicaragua, and Grenada, and other lands confronted corrupt rulers, often with guns in hand, and attempted to usher in the new society. Their movements were hardly mere reverberations of the Russian Revolution, yet the events of 1917 helped inspire them, affirming their conviction that with proper organization, workers and colonial subjects could defeat their class enemies and seize power. Now, one should never romanticize revolution. The left-wing insurrections of the 20th century were notoriously bloody. Insurgents faced staggering setbacks, reversals, and defeats. The post-revolutionary orders they established were rife with political and moral contradictions. If some liberators instituted sweeping social reforms, others reproduced the repression and exploitation they once decried. My purpose here is not to defend any particular government or revolutionary government or experience. I am simply suggesting that every authentic liberation movement, in the course of its ascent, captures the genuine social aspirations of a wide segment of the people. Whatever its eventual outcome, revolution is an essential expression of popular consciousness. It is the ultimate manifestation of the convictions that the old regime can no longer be tolerated. Today, many Americans detest the social misery that surrounds them, yet too few believe another world is possible. We would do well to remember that oppression is not inevitable. Daily battles for hegemony must be fought in the street, at the job, and on the terrain of consciousness. Even in a culturally backward country like the United States, where racial hostilities are entrenched and private property is God, oppressed people have the capacity to awaken, mobilize, and radically restructure society. What if we view movements such as Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, and the Bernie Sanders upsurge not as false starts, but as opening skirmishes in an escalating war whose greatest clashes lie just ahead? Yes, revolution is elusive. Festering grievances rarely morph into organized class struggle, but this does not mean that history has ended. Insurrectionary impulses reside wherever profound suffering and inequality exists. So let us brush away disillusionment. Let us peer beyond the barren horizon. Let us bear in mind that we are born to fight and that history is ours to make. So I wanted to I don't necessarily have a direct question related to that, but I wanted us to maybe just have a conversation about what it means to both think historically and contextualize what it means that there has been a long, ongoing history of struggles. There have been wins and losses. There have been, progressions and setbacks. And how do we take that to inform our sort of everyday, our spirit in terms of just our humanity, but then also what it means for how we continue to engage and struggle on the terrains where we are.
Dr. CBS?
I'm just taking it. I mean, I guess part of what I'm thinking about is the way that sort of fascist populism is woven through like that narration. So from Portugal to Germany, Italy, a lot of semi-peripheral countries, the installation of dictators throughout Latin America, real dictators, not the fake dictators that they call leftists. And so I think that dialectic is really important because those are revolutions of another sort as well. And both socialism and barbarism, fascism, whatever you want to call it, they're both populist movements. And so that's what I'm thinking about. And I think it's important to point that out because that's what we're up against, right? And so we have to be realistic, I think, about like the correlation of forces. But I think that he's right. I think, as the saying goes, it's like pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. Like if we don't believe that we're going to win, there's no point in doing anything that we do. And for those of us who are dedicated to, revolutionary struggle and the spirit of Black studies, like the movement, right? The Black studies movement, then these are this is Super Bowl, right? This is what we train for. This is what we study for. This is why we do what we do. Like these are the conditions that we are supposed to be struggling against and that we're trained to struggle against. And so those are the two sort of preliminary ideas I'm holding together.
Yeah, sorry. My house is frenetic right now. So I'm a little distracted. Yeah, no, I mean, and part of your question, I think, was about you know, how we engage our students in this moment, and you know, like, most of mine don't know any of this history. They don't know how to think about politics in any way that is outside of, like, you know, dominant political science paradigms. So just, you know, the concept of ideological struggle, the idea that there is a struggle, that the university is a terrain of struggle, just introducing these ideas to them to say, look, like, there are, you know, and no matter who you are and where you're from, like, you are in some ways connected to a radical and revolutionary lineage that you need to look back to, that you need to excavate, that you need to reconnect with. And that as you do that, you will begin to have at your disposal certain intellectual and political tools for making sense of the world. Like, there are, because they just have no understanding that there are actually strategies available to them for dealing with these. And that of course is not to say that like, things are still grim, right? But there's a kind of optimism that is fostered through the process of, like, engaging in struggle. Like, that in and of itself, engaging in political struggle entails a form of optimism, because you struggle because you're fighting for another outcome. And so it has to be, like, actively nurtured. But so much of these lineages that were sort of invoked in the text you just read are just not available to them. And so that's how I try to use my classroom time, no matter what I'm teaching. It's like trying to plug them into some of that, so that they begin to sort of understand that there's that there are strategies available to them for dealing with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, you know, over the course of CBS and I doing this podcast, we've had all these conversations about, do we need more podcasts? Do we need more whatever? But one thing that I do appreciate about having these podcasts is that in this moment where, like, what I'm doing in the classroom is not necessarily exactly directly related to everything, that I have places to point my students that they will take the time to actually consume, right? That they will watch and, you know, engage with in ways that will then push them to read other things. And so I've had a good experience, at least this semester, with my group of students in my Intro to Africana Studies course, because, like, they're literally coming in every day and they're like, bro, what the fuck? Like that, like, that's how class starts every day. And then I'm like, okay, what the fuck today? Like, what's the fuck today? And then having us starting class with reading this allows them to then ask certain questions that allow us to make these connections. And so, like you said, they've not been exposed to many of these things to read before. But I feel like what is happening, at least through these conversations, of being able to point them in these directions, like, okay, I want to know more about this thing. And even though that's not necessarily what's happening in this class, over the course of these 15 weeks, there are points of entry where I can ask questions, and I can come back and ask for more suggestions. And so for me, I will say that even as I am kind of, like, also in my own moments of what the fuck, try, like, the daily practice of trying to prepare for going into a classroom and knowing that I got 25, 35 students looking at me like, can you help me figure out how I should be feeling in this moment? It is one thing that helps me dispel my own sort of pessimism about what's happening, because, like, they still care enough to want to know. And so that I will say that I have constantly found the classroom as a space of, you know, radical potential, possibility, and you also know, as an audience that I've had bullshit in my class. I've had to deal with Zionist students too. So it's not that the classroom is a perfect space by any means, but that I personally continue to be like inspired and enlivened by the students saying, okay, what can we do? And then actually like using time in the classroom as space. Okay, well, what can you do? What kinds of organizations exist around you? What are you doing on campus? What are you in connection with outside of campus? And I personally feel like I am developing, even from learning from some of the things that they are doing and engaging with, that I don't necessarily know about. And so I find this, to be an ongoing conversation I'm having, with friends, with family, with students, whatever. And this is just a part of even my own sort of practice and figuring, okay, what do I need to do to like just not give into the despair of the moment.
And they're open now. They're open to a whole lot more that they weren't before because of the conditions. So that's something.
Oh, my intro students just want to know what's on the quiz, but my Black social and political thought students, they cool. But anyway, we are having a shorter episode today. I know Ori has to run and do family things. The other part of struggling again, the other part that, of remaining revolutionarily optimistic is raising our families, like raising our children to be revolutionaries and raising our children to know that, we brought them into this world because we believe another one is possible. Otherwise, it's just torture. So thank you, Ori, for being here.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Much appreciation to both of you.
Yes, thank you as always. And both of you all, give my love to all your little babies, because I ain't got none of my own.
Hugs.
All right, so.
All right, peace.
But what you do have is this: a man who will die on a hill crafted by the glare from your smile.
What is this?
Oh, not this one. Oh, that's the wrong one. Oh, yes. No, that was the right one. That was Drake, because Drake said, I'm on my way to get ready for Thailand. Wanted to write, hi, Dr. Layla.
What is wrong with you?
And then he said, I will die on a hill crafted by the glare from your smile. So listen, it might not, kids might be on the horizon. Excuse me, or on the hill crafted by the glare of your smile.
Shut up. You're a troll.
I am. Okay. Any Hooser.
I will say, I wanted to do, just before we got off, Musa said, often I communicate the clarity and even peace that can come from having a clear political ideology. Students are more receptive. I also find that to be true. CBS and I were jokingly, when we opened the show, we said, welcome to the niggerization of America. And I actually said that to my students. And in a funny way, my students both like laughed at that, but then they were like, no, you're right. Like, that makes sense. And somehow it gave them a little sense of peace. So, I don't know. I don't consider myself a particularly optimistic person, but I find these conversations necessary for finding places to find it. So.
Yeah. My intro class. I hear you. Every student is a potential comrade, but some of them are not. They are potential counter-revolutionaries. But we continue, and you never know. I guess I never know like what they are absorbing on the back end. So there's that. But I'd be lying if I said that it's all sunshine and pearls and radicalization. Where can you get this shirt? Get off me, my guy, my girl, my MB. Like, you don't get the fashion secrets. I'm just playing. I got it from what is it? TeePublic. Yep, TeePublic. Just type in communism, I guess. Or let me see what the I'm looking at the order. That's what I'm looking at, y'all. It's the I Love Hammer and Sickle shirt. TeePublic. Potential ops, seriously. It's like TEE public. TEE public, like that. Like T-shirt. A T.
That's exactly what came about.
All right, y'all. We got a shorter show today. Like I said, I have a presentation tonight at the Black Feminist Night School, so I need to go see my child and eat some food before that. But hopefully you found shout out to Tim. Hopefully you found this conversation enriching. Of course, Dr. Burton, friend of the show, we always love being in conversation with him. And as he said, like, his act shouldn't be notable, but the fact that it is says something about where we are politically. And you know, we still need to acknowledge when people do make the right decisions, because especially in our line of working, it happens so infrequently.
Ashley Knuckles said, "Will we read questions next time?" Did we not read out?
Well, y'all read questions next time. We did read questions.
Yeah. Was there something that we missed? Now, I know
we keep telling y'all to send questions to the email. So,
although we have some interesting conversations coming up. We haven't put out. We told you about some of them, but yes, that's the point of the live show. We
the comments. We didn't read the comments.
Oh, the comments.
We didn't read the comments. Yeah, see, we getting snippy with you, Ashley Knuckles, and you absolutely right.
Yes, we will.
Don't use some moist. Yeah, I put my question in the comments. Oh, can we find it like efficiently? Let's see if we can find your question.
Real quick.
Yeah, next episode in 2 weeks, y'all. We are beleaguered.
A little burnt out. A
little burnt, but yeah, we got Kiese Layman coming on. We got Kahinde Andrews.
Mamadou is coming back to talk about his
Mamadou and his lawyer. Gonna come on. Who else?
Okay, we can read. Yeah, I think we can do this real quick. It's only 7 comments on here.
Oh, okay.
Share screen.
It's not RJ. Oh, we found it. We found it, Ashley Knuckles. Okay.
Little Miss Tricky said, "Layla does not miss. She always looks so good. Thank you kindly."
Y'all really just be acting like I'm chopped liver. Okay, I'm cute too. I'm just playing. I do not care. Layla looks always gorgeous and radiant. I agree.
Shut up. I don't even.
Elon Nervora. Elon, has that always been your name? So sad I missed this live.
Denise Beasley, Abdallah. As always, thanks, ladies. Hugs for Sankara. Best wishes, guys.
Thank you. Great. From Michael Anderson, great analysis on setting students up for failure with the safe spaces in deeply unsafe context. I wonder, somewhat related, how the same energy can translate to parenting children in general, and the difference between soft parenting and maybe reality-based non-dominator parenting. To me, I think so like soft parenting, to me, people think it's like you just let your child do whatever they want.
And
to me, soft parenting is just like you lead with discipline, but discipline is not punishment. Discipline is not like violence. It's setting boundaries and sticking to them and sort of guiding them to where you want them to be. So to me, that's how I take soft parenting to be, which I think does prepare them for the world, in that, number one, they know what type of interactions to demand from other people and what to accept and not to accept from others. And I think that in soft parenting, we are healing and dealing with so much of our own bullshit, so much of our own trauma and triggers from our childhood. And soft parenting is really about regulating your own emotions.
Yeah.
And not letting your emotions guide how you treat your child.
Yeah, I mean, I echo your sentiments that I think people think soft parenting is permissive parenting, and that's not the case. I think I was soft parented in that, like, I wasn't whooped. I wasn't, but there was absolutely discipline and boundaries. But I think the primary thing for the way that I was parented was that everything got explanations. Like, there was not my parents tried their best not to pull the because I'm the parent, because I said so. Like, and part of that being that when you make a child accustomed to just accepting answers without explanation, then that's when you have fucking people like being cannon fodder. That's when you have sheep like just in flocks and people who don't ask questions. And like I said, the one thing my dad always said that, you know, if I do my job right, I'll spend more years with you as an adult than as a child. And I want to be able to have that. And I'm trying to parent you to be an adult in the world, not to be a child who just does what people say. And so
Hi, Tony.
Yeah, so I think there's that. You read that.
Yeah, and the other thing, and it's like guiding and stewarding your kids and not dominating them.
Yeah.
Which is hard, right? Because when you pay all the bills, you have all of the responsibility. It can be hard not to be like, do what I say. But again, what are you molding them to be in the long term?
Exactly. Oh, my dad said they always got all kind of flack for letting us have our say. But you know, I'm all right.
At you now.
Aria 672, is that Flames? Yeah.
Flame hard. I'm
gonna read this next one and you read the question from Ashley Knuckles. What is it? The Juma Boutique. Yes, Burkina Faso is extending citizenship to African diaspora. Details of this can be obtained via the African Diaspora Development Institution, an organization led by Dr. Arakana. So yeah, we mentioned that in the show last time.
That's dope. All right. So Ashley Knuckles. Hey, ladies. Kali Akuno was on the platform and said he has strong criticisms of the framework of racial capitalism and Cedric Robinson. However, he did not elaborate. From your research, what are some good faith critiques you all have come across and how would you respond to them? I'm very new to this framework and everything I've learned so far is logically sound. So I'm genuinely curious to see what other ideas are out there. Thank you. So I do think that, so a lot of us are critical of Cedric Robinson's racial capitalism, but Cedric Robinson's racial capitalism isn't the only framework. So the South African, there's a lot of South African scholars like Bernard Magubani and Alexander Neville who have a framework of racial capitalism, but there are a lot of critiques. So there's one by Louis Wacant that came out relatively recently. Cedric Johnson just dropped one that, you know, they all like, that drop, you know, it's long, it's perhaps worth reading, but I think that to me, I'm not a racial capitalism zealot. I find the framework or capitalist racism, which is the one that I use, to be useful. But to me, it's like, if you find it useful, use it. If not, oh well. I think that at bottom, what we're trying to say is that capitalism is racialized and that it is a sort of a structuring contradiction, antagonism and way of organizing political economy in the global system, and it has particular articulations wherever you are. That's a useful framework to me because so much of orthodox Marxism will treat race and, you know, and by extension colonization and settler colonialism as like, you know, secondary or super structural or whatever. So that's a very short and quick way to answer that question. But I think, so yeah, that when I respond to, because I'm named in some of these critiques, I just say, you know, if it's not your shit, don't use it. But like, I also am not about to sit here and debate about it because we got bigger fish to fry. Call the shit wabop loobop if you want, but what are you gonna do about it is the question.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that. So I think that is a good place to call it quits for the day.
See ya. Okay, Elon. Forevora. Oh, like so forever with
Evora, yeah.
Forevora.
Stacey Patton. I do like Stacey Patton's work on Spare the Kids. Got me straight on healing from my childhood violence and not continuing that violence with my daughter.
Yeah, people be on her helmet because she don't got kids, but it's like you don't have to have kids to say don't beat your fucking kids. Because you are around kids all the time. And it is awkward. I remember I was at the barbershop one time. Anyway, I gotta go. But anyways, I was at the barbershop one time. This mom she was like punking her son, like punched him in the chest. It's like a baby. He was like 7. And then was like, and you better not cry. It's like, ma'am, you just fucking power punched your son in public, but everybody's not supposed to cry. And it's like, and you wonder why, you know, these children come out the way that they do. And it's embarrassing. It's awkward. Like for people who have to observe this and can't step in to protect the child and just, you know what I mean? And so like, it's dumb. And I would never treat my daughter like that. And if I did, I hope that she burns down whatever structure I'm in with me in it.
I remember my dad told me a story about when he stopped whooping, because I got a few whoopings as a kid, but he said one time he was just like, I refused to cry. He was like, and when you refused to cry, it made me feel like I was trying to beat you until you cried. And he was like, and that clearly was not the point. And so like, and that, you know, my parents from a fairly early age, at least with me and my younger brother, you know, had really questioned the notion, the utility of corporal punishment and the ways that it is linked to histories of enslavement and our needs to discipline our own children and for our fear of what they are going to encounter out in the world. And so, and that's also something that I appreciate about Stacey Patton's work. She also like disrupts this notion that like, because Black people, you know, there's a story that Black people are so much more amenable to corporal punishment. And she's like, no, that is actually directly a byproduct of colonialism and slavery. That is not something that it was actually like. And
religion, spare the rod, spoil the child. That's literally like beat your kid ass unless you want them to come out messed up. Like that's crazy. Yeah, the verbal, and Leah's right. The verbal abuse is crushing. It's like, we just wonder why these children come out the way that they do, and they turn out to be adults that do all sorts of shit. Now, some turn out perfectly fine because they reject that, and others do all kind of other shit. Yeah. Like, it's just, and whatever, to each their own, but it's like, I'm not, I could never with my daughter. And if anybody ever tried to discipline my child in that way, it's up.
And it also just models that the way that you deal with discomfort or discontent is by putting your hands on somebody. And that's not no shit that you want to like, because I can't manage how I feel in this situation and I get to hit you. And then when you can't manage how you feel in this situation, you get to hit somebody else. Like it's a fucking terrible cycle. So.
Yeah. See, my mom stopped whooping me because like I was immune to whoopings. Like I would still be wiping the tears off my face, going to do the same exact thing. Like it just didn't work. And I think as a parent, you just get to the point, like, you know, if I'm trying to have this effective, I could like beat my child to death or whatever. Like I'm gonna, you know what I mean? And it's just like, there's just other ways. And then, you know, so we was on the point system for a long time and that shit was fucking trash. Let me tell you what.
What was the point?
It's like you had to get a certain amount of points to be able to do certain shit. And you know, I never had no points. I was bad. So I just was doing stuff. Anyway, whatever. But here we are. So, you know.
My dad just lecture the shit out of us. And then sometimes we'd be like, bro, can you just whoop us? Because then the lecture that would be over faster than the lecture. But to be fair, we knew exactly why what we did was a problem. Mm-hmm. Like there was no question about it because it was gonna be a long ass conversation about it. So.
Yeah, so if you got kids, don't beat them. Like don't do your best not to reproduce your own trauma or to enact trauma for the first time because like we don't have it's in this economy, we don't even have money to work it out no more. So it's gonna be fucked up.
That's funnier than it should have been, is what I should say.
Like, yeah.
Well, you know, go love on Sankara for me. I feel like these 2 months that I haven't seen her feel so long now.
I know we gotta get y'all back reunited because you know how she feels about you.
Listen, that's my boo.
Gotti.
As soon as I be like, that's my sugar mama, and then I get all them teeth.
Yeah, and they're so cute. Them teeth are so cute. I can't lie to you. All right, y'all.
All right.
We'll see you in 2 weeks, 4 p.m. Eastern, as usual. We might have another guest. It might just be us. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, y'all.
Peace.